Hello and welcome to Radio Faces, brought to you by HCCTV. I'm Indy Kalu of Sports Radio 610, and he is John the General McClain, Hall of Fame sports writer for the Chronicle, and you could also catch him on Sports Radio 610.
Coming up later in our show, and we think it's a great show for you, will be the original Radio Face, Houston radio legend Barry Warner with his weekly rant. So stay tuned for Barry. Right now, Indy, as we always do, let's start with the Texans, a 31-24 heartbreaker. Have you ever been the victim of a Hail Mary?
In my 12 years in the NFL, 4 years in college, I have never been a part of a Hail Mary play that actually worked. And that's why I was so amazed to see how that game ended. But if you ask me, it should not have even come down to the Hail Mary play. The Texans knew what they had at stake with this game. They knew it was a division rivalry game. It had so much playoff implication that I expected them to come out a little more energetic. They just came out flat. They came out in the first half like they didn't understand what was at stake. And players always claim they don't read the paper. They don't watch, they don't listen to talk radio, they don't watch the news, but they do know how important this game was, not just for the record, not just for the divisional playoff, but for public perception. This team is perceived as average, and after that game, they proved to everybody they're just an average team.
No, they're not an average team. They're below average. They're 4-5. That is below average. Let me tell you something good that happened to the Texans. While they were watching on TV last night, they became the second worst defense in the NFL, and they became the third worst in NFL history to the Washington Redskins. The Redskins were so bad against the Eagles, they bypassed the Texans. But think about it for a second. The Baltimore Colts in 1981, and now the Redskins are on that same pace, and the Texans are third worst in history. Can you believe that? And also, they're on a pace to shatter the record for the worst pass defense. That's how pathetic that defense is.
So you're talking about the history of the NFL, not the season, not the franchise.
Not since the merger, the history, all the way back to 1920.
And when you talk about how bad this defense is, and I'm still calling the team average, what's elevating them to average status is their offense. You know, you could talk about the offense needs to put a complete game together, but when it's all said and done, this offense is putting points on the board. They have the best running back in the game. They still have the best wide receiver in the game, and they have a pretty good quarterback. So the offense is trying to carry this team, but what's dragging them down, unfortunately, is my ex-comrades, the defense, and everyone's pointing to Frank Bush. The question is he the problem, or is it the talent on the team?
I think after the season, if it doesn't improve, you know there's going to be changes on this staff, and we've known Frank forever, and I think he's going to be the first one. You can't be last or next to last and cost your team wins. Now, I'll tell you something. You mentioned the offense. Check this out. You're talking about them being flat when they came out offensively. They say we don't get enough snaps. Well, it's their own fault they don't get snaps because they're not good on third down. In the first half this season, they are tied for 28 in points allowed. In the second half, they're number 2. So they proves they can do it. What does that show you about a team? You were there 12 years. You went to the playoffs 5 times. How do you explain that?
Well, I can't explain it. And again, the question really is it the coaching? Is it the preparation? Is it the talent? Because when you tell me those stats, it lets me know that those players could compete and they could dominate when you're talking about their number 2 during one half of the game. So the question is, why can't they sustain that for 60 seconds? And that's only a question the general manager, the head coach, and the owner need to find answers to. And what's now? You know, what's next? That's what everyone's asking themselves. If they do not make the playoffs, and with that last loss, it's looking like they probably won't make the playoffs, what's going to happen? Is Kubiak going to get fired? Is Frank Bush, the defensive coordinator, going to be the scapegoat? Or is Bob McNair, the owner, going to say, you know what, we're almost there, I'm going to give it one more chance? And that's what the fans, the players, the organizations, they have to ask themselves at the end of the season, what now if they don't make the playoffs?
Playoffs, I will not mention playoffs and Texans in the same sentence the rest of the year. And I got another great stat for you, talking about slow starts. No playoff team does this. In the first half, they're 30th in yards. In the second half, they're first. Can you believe that? And that, remember, they even started well against San Diego, and they're still pathetic in the first half. And so what does a team do to get itself ready in the first half? What do you try to change?
Well, you have to change the way you prepare. And what I'm saying is that if they can't put a whole game together, you have to think, is their conditioning not right? Is their mentality not right as far as staying focused for 60 minutes? And that's when players hate to hear this. You might have to extend the practices, extend the meetings, extend the teaching groups. Because if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing for 30 minutes consistently and not 60 minutes, then you need to prepare a little bit longer.
Okay, that's enough on the Texans. Let's go to our smart decision of the week. There are always a lot of bad ones, But let's start with Andy. What's your smart decision of the week?
You know what? They admitted they were wrong. That was my smart decision of the week. And what I'm talking about is before they moved Brian Cushing to the middle to try to replace the All-Pro D'Amico Ryans, it was an experiment that failed, and the coaches weren't too stubborn. You know what? They didn't say, we're not listening to anybody, we're going to leave Cushing in the middle. They said this was a mistake. Cushing's the type of player that needs to be on the outside, and he needs to have that mentality, see ball, get ball, instead of trying to get everybody lined up. So they moved him back to his natural position against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he had 9 solo tackles. So that was my smart decision, player of the week.
He said that he felt more at home, that he could cut loose. He didn't have to think as much as he usually does. He can react instinctively, and that's one of the best things about him. Now, my smart decision of the week, Jerry Jones fired Wade Phillips, promoted Jason Garrett. Cowboys go up, beat a team, the Giants, that had 5 consecutive wins, was my best team in the league. Now all of a sudden the Cowboys look like they did against the Texans. How do you explain it?
Well, first of all, I'm going to ask you, did you just call Jerry Jones smart?
I did.
I never thought I'd hear those words coming out of your mouth, but you're absolutely right. He had a tough decision to make. Everybody knows that he likes Wade Phillips, but outside of how you feel about somebody, business still has to be taken care of. So I agree that was a smart decision, and it paid off for him in huge dividends on Sunday when they dominated, not just beat, but they dominated the New York Giants.
That's our show this week. We'll be back same place, same time next week.
I'm Indy Kalu, Sports Radio 610. He's John the General McClain, Hall of Fame sports writer for the Chronicle, and you can also catch him on Sports Radio 610.